Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm the Dynamite Doll, and welcome to a very special episode of Dirt with the Doll. This is episode number 7, part 2, and it is a special tribute episode to my father, the Dynamite Kid. Yesterday marked his 7-year anniversary passing, and also was his 67th birthday. I wanted to make a really special tribute video, and I reached out to a bunch of friends, family, wrestlers around the world to make a video of my father. And my next guest was gracious enough to say, hey, would you like me to come on and be a guest on your podcast and talk about your father? So I would like to welcome everyone to the Dollhouse, the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Bronwyn. I'm really happy to be here. And that request I made to you just seemed to make sense. So, yeah, I said, would you, like you said, I was like, would you like to be the guest? And you were like, you
couldn't
made
be
it
more
out.
humbled.
Well, I really appreciate that. From our talks in the past, I really thought highly of your dad, and I'm happy to be on this podcast.
Thank you so much. You were at a convention today. How was it?
It was pretty good. But I'll tell you what, you learn from your mistakes. If I'd known that my card reader would not work because I was coming from another country, I would have worked on that last night before I got to the convention. I was lucky that there was a big line, and for 30 minutes, I couldn't. It was just
is that for taking payment?
Yeah. And then I was like, whoever has cash, and then people are going to the ATMs, and then luckily someone who knows more than I do about these things was able to figure out that it was a geography issue and that we had to adjust to being back in the United States.
Oh, are you in New Orleans?
I'm an hour west of New Orleans. I was in New Orleans last night. Had some, it was a French restaurant, but it still had that Cajun feeling to it. But tonight I'm going Cajun. So love the food. And I'm one of those people who feels like, if you're in a unique part of the country or the world, then try that cuisine. Don't go to like a chain store that you could eat
absolutely
anywhere else.
Absolutely. So, we're going to talk a lot about my dad today, and let's just dive in. So what was your earliest memory of witnessing my dad live or perform? Maybe not live, but perform.
No, I had no idea at the time that WWE had bought Stampede Wrestling. I'd never even heard of Stampede Wrestling. This would be maybe 84. Maybe you would know better the first time your dad came to WWE. And I just remember he was in a singles match. And I believe at the end of the match, he did a kip up. I can't remember. He probably won from the headbutt off the top. And Vince McMahon was calling the matches. I didn't even know that he was the owner of WWF at that time. And I just remember he said, look at this man. He is ready. And I remember thinking, yeah, he really is. It was such a new
I
style
do remember
of
seeing that video. I'm not sure if that wasn't against Tiger Mask, was it?
No, because that was the famous match at the Garden, which probably took place before then. Because don't quote me on that. Your mom would probably know. We could line up the dates, but I didn't see the match against Tiger Mask until I was already in the business, and it was really great. The last time I saw you, I had dinner with you and your mom, and she explained the reason that your dad was wearing, the Dynamite Kid was wearing trunks, which he very rarely, if ever, wore, because he always wore the tights, was because they did not want to risk him, having his bag searched going over the border. And so he didn't have a green card at that time. And so he borrowed someone's trunks for this match that was legendary because it was so different from what anybody was doing in WWF matches at that time.
Yes. My mom is an encyclopedia. I'm not great with dates myself, but she's the one that keeps me in check with, oh no, it was here, it was there, it was this date. So yeah. That's not my forte, but she's good with the dates for sure. So what do you think it was about my dad that made you gravitate towards him and the audience as well?
Well, when I got into wrestling, I don't think your dad was there long in WWF the first time, because I wrestled your dad in '86. I think it was September or August of '86. I know because he kind of put a beating on me. We could talk about that. I don't mind talking about
That's
it.
Coming up.
It was an honor. And then the next night I had the Killer Bees, and we'll talk about the injury and the effect of I suffered from having my jaw dislocated. That showed itself the next night. But I drove back. I can't remember if I stayed for the night in Connecticut or if I drove back to Cortland, New York, where I went to college. So I was like a day or two late for college, and I drove back. At that time, I'd been training, I guess, for a year and a half, and I would always deny that I was training to be a wrestler, even after my housemates confronted me one day and said, "All right, you have this girlfriend you claim you're visiting, but she never calls you. You never call her. You leave every Friday. You come back every Sunday night."
The wrestling was the girlfriend.
The wrestling was a girlfriend. They said I didn't smell good. I was usually banged up. I had 2 sleeping bags in the back seat of my car, fast food wrappers or whatever I could afford at that time. And I was like, "What are you trying to say?" Like, "We know you're wrestling." I said, "No, no, no, no." And I just didn't want to let them take that away from me until I'd had one match. I thought they might try to, really my confidence was not high anyway, but they were great guys, but I thought they might like unknowingly, work on my confidence, work against it. And so I came home, I came to college, and they were out there. They like confronted me when I drove up. They said, "We know you're wrestling and your name is Catfish Jake." I said, "Well, it's not. It's Cactus Jack." And you're right. I've been wrestling this whole time. So
and that's without the internet. They did their research.
Oh, right. Yeah. Now it'd be easy to pick up on those type of things.
So, what from my father did you emulate into your own?
Yeah. So I have the match with the Bulldogs, right? Do you want me to go into the match at this point?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to dive in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had one match in my career in front of a couple hundred people in Clarksburg, West Virginia, against a fellow Danucci trainee, and we stunk that place up. And now but I was, I was fairly solid. I could take pretty good, basic bumps. I don't think I'd gone, like created the big stuff I did. But I could do the basics, and it was thought I could do a serviceable job. I see my name either on the chalkboard or someone tells me it's the Bulldogs. I remember I had like a bandana, like a cheetah print bandana, and Pat Patterson said, no to that. No Cactus Jack. I was just either Jack Foley or Mick Foley. They messed up my name a couple different times in the 5 or 6 enhancement matches I had. And I remember like telling Tommy and Davey about some of the things I'd like to do, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do a lot of fun things out there." And I actually felt like I had some mojo going with the crowd because I was like yelling at the crowd.
Yeah.
And then when I see Davey and Les Thornton doing some really good old school technical wrestling, it dawned on me, oh, like I'm the sacrificial lamb here. And sure enough, man, your dad, he gave me a snapmare and he dropped that headbutt. Like, I always learned you turn your heads so you don't, catch your eyebrows, your nose, your teeth. It just caught the soft part of the skull and it hurt for about, I'd say 3 weeks, and then Davey tagged in and I did something monumentally stupid. I tried to create my own comeback, called the flying elbow, which at that point was like that was the hallmark of my matches, where I would like leap into the air, hit the guy, spin around, and I'm expecting some type of ooh sound, like ooh, and instead I hear laughter, and I look up at Davey. He hadn't insulted at all. He was still standing. He gave me a headbutt, which was I could work with. But when I look back at the tape, I could see your dad, Tommy, like shaking the ropes. Like can't wait to get in here. And he did that clothesline, the one that your cousin does on AEW, where he follows. He comes in. He doesn't wait there. He follows you in. So as you come off the ropes, boom. But he caught me at the point of the jaw with his bicep. I'd like to think, at the very least, his bicep hurt him for a couple of days because I didn't know until like 98 or 99 when I had a similar problem. Maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the course of my career, I had this issue where I would get clotheslined and then I couldn't chew food for a couple of weeks. And Francois Petit, who was on hand as like a healer, chiropractor, shiatsu guy, he did a lot of good for guys in WWE. He was like, I can fix it. And he did something that looked like it came right out of a Three Stooges movie. And I was thinking while he did it, like, surely he knows that I know this isn't going to work. But as soon as he did it, I was like, oh, my jaw worked. And that's when he explained to me that it was dislocated. And I had no idea. So without somebody putting it back in, it eases its way back in, but only after a few weeks, during which you really struggle. It was so bad, Bronwyn, that I thought this was going to be my Achilles heel, like the reason I couldn't continue in wrestling, that I'd have this jaw that couldn't withstand a clothesline. So it was a tough match, ended with the back suplex off the top. I tucked my chin to my chest, but that's a long way to come down. And, I was worse for the wear after that. And as soon as I got back to the dressing room, I asked a couple of the veterans, like, hey, where are the Bulldogs? And I guess they thought, like, I'm going to take some type of exception to how I was, treated. I walk in and I just put up my hand. I said, it was such an honor to work with you, which is what you're supposed to do anyway. But in this case, I really meant it. By that point, I had studied your dad's matches. Good friend of mine named Brian Hildebrand, who would later go on to manage in Smoky Mountain Wrestling and then referee in WCW under the name Mark Curtis. He knew I was having trouble with my punches, and he gave me a VHS tape, and he told me to study the punches thrown with a wild brawl between Terry Funk and Bruiser Brody. What he did not tell me was on the same tape, there was a Tiger Mask Dynamite Kid match. And I was so transfixed by both matches, but I knew that I did not have like just the physical presence of a Bruiser Brody or a Terry Funk. And I knew that I couldn't fly like your dad or wrestle technically, but I thought, what if I combined some of that brawling style from Brody and Funk with Tommy's willingness to launch his own body as a weapon. So I love Tiger Mask was phenomenal, but I was drawn to Dynamite, and his fearlessness and his willingness to put his body in the line was a big inspiration to me. Unfortunately, it's what ended up putting him out of wrestling, and at such a young age, and putting him in a wheelchair. But no question, I was drawn to that willingness to sacrifice your own body.
I love that. And I'm a big fan of Bruiser Brody too. So I think that's super cool. That those are the two that you really looked up to and kind of molded into your own character. So in 1986, the match we were just talking about, how did you personally process the aftermath? I guess you took it like a badge of honor and you shook their hand.
Oh yeah. But I also realized, wow, this is really, really physical.
Yeah.
We worked.
You would have been out. You were out for a little bit after that, right?
I think I may have had to miss a couple weeks of school.
Did that make you think a little bit? Were you like, is this really for me? Like,
it made me wonder if I could take it.
Yeah.
Because of the jaw, not because of the bumps. But it was a problem, when you're, in your first week of school and you can't chew. Yeah. What happened the next night against the Killer Bees is I saw my mom and dad They came to the matches in Providence when I wrestled your dad and Davey, and they went to the matches I think in Hartford or I think it was Hartford. They saw me in the parking lot, and my mom was talking to me. My dad, he was the athletic director at our high school, and even though not nearly as much was known about concussions at that time, like as the athletic director, he knew more than most, and he could see that the lights were on, but no one was home. And my mom said, "I thought it was all fake." I said, "Mom, nothing ever felt as real in my life."
Yeah.
And what happened, because the jaw was out of line, I took a simple back body drop from either Brunzell or Brian Blair. And when I did, instead of my mouth closing regularly, my top teeth smashed or gnashed into my bottom ones. It knocked my teeth in. It was not the same injury that, I would suffer, in a car accident that did knock my teeth out, because that was 4 years later. But talk about a trial by baptism by fire. Yeah.
Right.
But
so did you and my dad build much of a friendship after that first match you guys had against each other?
No, no. I mean, at that point, you see so many people, and when he had his book Pure Dynamite, and it was the subject of hurting my jaw came up, he just said, "Well, I don't remember it, but it's probably true because that's the way I worked at that time." So he didn't say, "No, that guy," he didn't cast dispersion on me, say I wasn't tough. But we did, we really connected in Japan in 1991. Your dad, he took a liking to me. He was known as a ribber, but he never ribbed me. And I remember, and this is, remember I said I was going to write you a letter, and then I never did. I got like halfway done. I was like, this isn't good enough. But the story I was trying to tell is, your dad was in a lot of pain at that time. And, he could barely walk in the dressing room. But when that bell sounded, you never would have known it. But then he would come back and be almost like, uh, not motionless, but he would have to lie down most of the day, lie down in a seat in the bus. And so, like a lot of guys, he'd have a few drinks after the show. And I remember him coming, his eyes were kind of like just really bright. And he was telling me, "Baba likes you." He wanted the best for me, and he saw something in me. We only had one singles match, and it was a house show. And by that time, I was, able to take some. I'd had quite a few bumps in my arsenal. And at this particular house show, there were some empty seats on the floor. And I had told your dad, like, if you send me to those seats, I'm gonna knock down a lot of them. So it was good, and he liked me, and I think he respected me, and I saw him, maybe another 5 to 10 times, probably I'd say, 7 or 8 times over the next several years. He was always nice to me. There's a funny photo I'll share with you, and you can put it up sometime. It's your dad doing the bunny ears, behind me, and I think his book came out like within a year of mine, and he was kind of ribbing me about maybe a few of the things I didn't touch in, like the steroids, that he was much more candid about. But the truth is, I rarely saw that type of thing because if you're not in those circles, you didn't know about them. Like
he was like in an era before you, so a little bit different during your time.
Well, they were still, in use in when I was in WCW. When I got to WWE in '96, they were doing the really strict testing. And I remember even when the doctor talked to me about my upcoming test, he's like, you probably messed around with the juice. And I was like, no, actually I haven't. But the testing, I mean, it was toning down when I got there. But at that point, there was a much clearer path for guys who didn't have the look, that WWE previously had been looking for.
Do you have a favorite match of my dad's?
Well, I think the first, there were so many great matches he had with Tiger Mask. It was that one that I saw that first time, and there there was a series of exchanges, and it was done so lightning fast that when I broke it down, I was like, okay, it was just a simple 4 steps. I think your dad went to suplex Tiger Mask. He dropped behind your dad, 2 quick reversals, and then going into the ropes as if for a roll up. But your dad ducked between, he kind of ducked slash dove between the second and third rope, and Tiger Mask went out too. And I couldn't figure out how they did it until I frame by framed it. And I tried it a couple times, but it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So my version of it looked pretty, lame. And then I passed it on to the Motor City Machine Guns, who did it in a match with me. Like it was a 2-on-1 match, both machine guns against me. And because they were quick in that sense, I think it was Alex Shelley went for the suplex drop behind, and a quick go behind reversal. He did it with me, boom, go into the ropes for a roll up, whether I ducked down or he ducked down. It got a good reaction, but it wasn't the same. Everything your dad did was just done with the utmost tenacity, athleticism. There's a world of difference between getting shot into the guardrail, for example, and taking it in a so-so manner like most human beings would, because we got a defense mechanism. And then there were guys like your dad who just was like, no, we're going to make this look as good as possible. Yeah. And I think one of those was on the dark side of the ring. And it's one of the things that people went, whoa, like this is different. And everything he did was different, because even if it was a basic move, even if it was his snap suplex was the best snap suplex. Nobody ever did it like that, and you don't really see the snap suplex. Does your cousin do it in AEW?
I don't think I've seen it. No.
But I do know that when he sends somebody into the ropes,
yes,
does it just like your dad?
With a lot of intention, like my father did. Yes, yeah. Everything has to look real. He moves very similar.
The ropes, Irish whips. It's my pet peeve when someone doesn't put their all into it. Mm-hmm. And that includes some really good wrestlers who just learned it, didn't learn it the right way. And once you learn the incorrect way, it's kind of tough to go back. And I don't want to, I don't want to say who it was in the big match, because he was a great wrestler. He's not here with us anymore. It's like, wait, what is he doing? What, like you have to make it look like it's a feat of strength. Like it could conceivably happen, and you have to put all your weight into it. There's different ways to do it. I tried my best to make it look like I was really pulling on my with my lats to get him in there and then push from behind. But the way your cousin does it, by like exploding into the ropes with the person he's whipping, and then it's like using that momentum to sail that guy off, and it's effective. By virtue of the fact that I'm on a wrestling podcast talking about an Irish whip, like it really stood out to me. Like, wow, that's an Irish whip. That's how you can suspend disbelief and say, yeah, I do believe this 220-pound man could fire somebody off. But a lot of times, not picking on the luchadors, but sometimes the whip is like just like it's just a way to get into a cool move. And I think everything, when you're talking about athletes today who are, by and large, much better, like your dad was such an extraordinary athlete, but he really stood out with that athleticism. But now there are great athletes in there who can do a lot more, but it's just a matter of connecting with the audience, finding something that makes what you do different, and then connecting the dots with promos, ability to follow storylines, get people caught up in your personal struggles, trials and tribulations during the match. There's so many things that go into making somebody successful, not the least of which is the push you get from the promotion. But still, it's like those little things. So when you have a grizzled 40-year veteran like me, Bronwyn, like going, wow, look at that Irish whip. You're doing something right.
Yeah. I'm so proud of my cousin too. Like, it's cool that we're even mentioning him right now.
I hope he likes it, because when I first heard his nephews are in, was there one or two of his?
There's two of them.
Yeah.
Tom's younger brother. He's obviously younger. He's back in England, and he's a boxer as well. So, and I think he had a shoulder injury, so that's why he's not wrestling right now. But
Okay.
yeah.
But I thought, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really seen them, and I don't think I've seen them as a team.
Yeah.
So the AEW match was the first one, and it was not a lengthy match, but like I said, every little thing looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, he's doing great. So how do you think my dad's career paved the way for future generations, including yourself?
Yeah, well, it definitely did. It's been rumored, that Stampede became a much more difficult place to get over because they'd seen your dad at his peak. They'd seen the matches that Tommy, your dad, and Bret Hart had. The first ladder match of all time was the two of them. But it showed that your dad was built and he had an incredible build, but he was smaller. But no one ever doubted that he could take on the biggest guys. I think it was unfair that they'd be stealing the show at the New Japan shows, and they still focused on the heavyweights. But he paved the way for a more physical, realistic style, flying combined with technical wrestling. That just the attitude that I think borrowed from him, that I know this is going to hurt, but this is the style I have, and I'm going to live with the effects. And your dad paid a much higher price than I have thus far. I mean, I was really, really hurting for several years. And then in 2017, I had a hip replacement and a knee replacement that really, gave me a new lease on life. But, you can see it in the style today. I don't know. I imagine gradually it would have headed that way. But before your dad and Tiger Mask, didn't seem to me. Now, a wrestling historian could probably point out the error in what I'm saying, but at least for me as a fan, I'd seen some flying matches, I'd seen some technical matches, I'd seen some strong style matches, but I didn't see a combination of all, a blend of all three. And certainly, if somebody like me can look at that and go, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, but I can take the spirit of what he's doing, apply it to what I'm capable of doing, blend it in with a little bit of that brawling style. I might be onto something, and luckily I was.
I love that so much. Did you train much in Calgary at all? Did you ever train at the Hart House?
No, I never trained at the Hart House. I wish I did. It would have been nice to be stretched by Stu, just so I could say I did it. I guess I could say I did it, but I would be lying.
I was going to ask if you had any Stu stories. Did you never meet Stu?
Oh, I did meet him, but I met him when he was older.
Oh,
I met him when he's older. I mean, my I have the same impersonation a lot of guys do. 27 different ways to break an arm. Here, let me show you a couple of them. And then he'd have a trainee give him his arm, and then Stu when they would be screaming, goes, fight it, show some dignity, damn it. I just love the idea that here, there's 27 different ways to break an arm, probably more. Here, let me show you a few of them. Not that he couldn't have taken the guy's arm on his own, but then he to show some dignity. I just love it. It's I'll tell you what, Bron, when I was driving with Terry Funk, and he was asking me about my one-man shows, and he asked me if I'd ever done one in Calgary. I said, yeah, I have. And Terry said, oh, were any of the Harts there? I said, yeah, there were some. He said, how many? I said, 17. And he put his hand on my knee and he said, 17 Harts came to your show. Do you know what an honor that is? I said, I do. I said, I'm not saying they were all sitting next to each other or talking with each other, but there were 17. And then a couple of years later, I came in and there were 22 Harts. So even though I never trained in Calgary, I really felt like a connection with the family. I did walk out and left WWE for one day after the Montreal incident. My wife then read my contract and told me I'd breached it and he couldn't wrestle anywhere in the world for 5 years. And then I went back, hat in hand. But at least it was something, Well, there was a bunch of people saying they weren't coming back. And, Rick Rude and I were the only two who didn't. Rick completely left the company. People think I made the stand, but he was the one that actually left the company and went elsewhere.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah. Your cousin, Lindsay, has hosted a few of my shows. And so she was on a trip. It was me, Lindsay, and her boyfriend, Theo. And when I dropped Lindsay off, she had a card for me. And she said, read it when you get to your hotel. And so I got to my hotel and I opened it and she said, you remind me so much of my Uncle Owen that when I'm with you, it's almost like he's still here. And I had to fight back tears. I can't remember if I was successful, but in fighting them back. But that was
what's wild is my next question is about Owen.
Really? Yeah. Let me hear it.
So you and Owen were really close. Do you think that young Owen was influenced by my dad's style of wrestling? Because he definitely was more of a high flyer than a lot of people.
Because Owen was the guy. I mean, he started at the bottom like all the Hart children, setting up rings. And he had that fun-loving attitude, from what I understand, as a young boy growing into a young man. Had a really good amateur career. Can't remember what college, but he was very good. But instead of like gravitating towards the that shooting-based style, which he could do and did do, but he was drawn to the dives and the acrobatics, and he was a phenomenon in Japan. And I don't see how that style would have come to him unless he'd been influenced by Dynamite Kid.
Yeah. Did you ever see their street fight match in Stampede Wrestling? My dad and Owen?
No, I'd like to though.
Yeah. Wow. I think my dad had he had like a little white crop top, tank top kind of thing on, it was the 80s. And like kind of army pants, which was weird for him. I guess it was a street fight, so wearing something different. And my uncle Mark, so my cousin Tom in AEW, actually has the pants that my dad was wearing in that match.
Wow. Now, have I told you about my Mount Rushmore?
Well, I think my dad's on there.
Yeah. So, you know what? There's a few of them that leave, that enter, but it's always Terry Funk and your dad are always on it. Sometimes it's Flair and Shawn Michaels. Sometimes, Brett has been in there. Couple of other people, like a Harley Race, but the one that always gets a reaction among the wrestlers, because the fans will be like, what, who? Sometimes they don't know, or they don't realize how, important your dad was in the history of wrestling. But the reaction is kind of like, oh, that's an interesting one. But they never say he doesn't belong there. And that's the beauty of the Mount Rushmore, is that nobody's wrong. Right? Nobody's wrong. And when I put your dad up there, I'm not wrong. It doesn't mean it's an opinion, but that's how high esteem I hold him in, as if, that he was one of the 4 best wrestlers I've ever seen.
I like that. Mine always changes too. It never seems to stick the same. So I'm glad that yours changes too, because I'm always like, I should know this. But
what's fun for me? Oh, sorry, Bronwyn. Excuse me?
It's 5, right? So I'm always like, oh, I got to
I think I thought it was 4.
Is it 4? I thought it was 5.
I think it's 4. It makes it easier if there's 5. But I believe there's 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore. So what I like to do is, you take that concept and you expand it to like the 4 best territory, your Mount Rushmore, U.S. territory wrestlers, 4 best, Mount Rushmore of best talking wrestlers, British wrestlers. So, when you go to the, obviously your dad would be on that list as well. Now, don't ask me to round out my other 3, because I'm going to show
it's been a long day.
My lack of knowledge. And I have to go in about 10 minutes, if that's okay.
Yes.
Is that okay? Okay. Thank you, Bronwyn.
Oh, yes. I know you're so tired. Okay. So I think you saw my dad last in 2000 in Sheffield. Was that the last time you would have seen him? Did he share any wrestling advice with you or insight about the business?
I'm sure he did. It doesn't. What sticks out to me is more the feeling of remember, I'm the guy whose jaw he dislocated in 80, in 86. So 14 years later, he would come to a couple of the WWE events, and all of the wrestlers appreciated him, but I don't know if anyone idolized him like I did. And so to have a photo where he's smiling and he's giving me the bunny ears, it's really
Yes, that was
it's
the
really
photo.
nice. So I think that was the last time I saw him. And I'm so impressed. I tell people, that you decided at a certain point you wanted him in your life, and you took it on your own. You showed the initiative to show up at his door. And the quote I have is that you said, "I'm your daughter, and you will have a relationship with me." And he said, "Come on in." So, do I have that right?
Well, I did not. No, I did not say that.
Oh, okay.
But I did show up at his door, and I was emotional, and he acted like nothing. He's like,
Really?
why are you crying? I'm like, because I haven't seen you for 15 years. Like, but he was so happy. So I just stopped crying because I was like, all right, he's acting like nothing. We're cool. Like, so I just sat down and that's how we
And
reconnected.
that's really great. I mean, that's for anyone out there, there's always time. There's always a way to make a fresh start, and there's always a way to forgive what somebody's done in the past. And
Yeah.
all of us are made up of aspects of good and bad, and hopefully, in the course of our lifetimes, the good greatly outweighs the bad, and that's the way I felt about your dad. He had his demons, and when I watched The Dark Side of the Ring, I was so proud of you
Thank
for
you.
for being in there and being so honest. And I always thought it was one of the two or three saddest I've ever seen. But at the end of, and I was glad that I was a part of it. And I think I said that, sometimes when somebody is so good at something, you just assume they got the rest of life figured out. And that's often not the case. And especially in wrestling, for me, I was a sensitive kid who wanted to be accepted. And I was able to find that acceptance from strangers, by being very honest, showing emotions, working really hard, going above and beyond. And from what I understand, your dad, they roughed him up pretty good. He shows up. You've seen the photos where he was this, young lad, and he went in there to the snake pit, where everyone learned to respect it, and he learned to be tough or go home, and he toughed it out and became one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But that doesn't come without a cost.
What do you think the biggest misconception of my father is?
That he wasn't as great as I think he is. I think some people would say, well, he was just a tag team wrestler in WWE. Like, no, he was one of the great tag teams of all time in WWE. And, WWE is also getting the Tommy Billington, who was, had some wear and tear on him. And they were a great tag team, and they elevated tag team wrestling. Because they were not the type of guys, when you go back to the dressing room and how was it? It was a night off. Well, wrestling your dad was not a night off. He worked hard. And, I wish I'd seen some of the house shows he had with him and Davey with the Hart Foundation, because, they were legendary matches. And, on the house shows, you could do more than what you could on TV. And so I would say the misconception is that not by wrestlers, but by fans, is that he doesn't belong up there in that elite company. And, I'll argue on behalf of your dad, uh, every day, all day, and twice on Sundays.
My father, at the end of his career, he had no regrets and would do it all again. How about yourself?
Yeah. Well, you know what? There's a few things I regret. One is, we didn't know about the head injuries. Is that a child I hear?
It's a cat. Okay. He wants
Oh,
to
the
be
cat's
seen.
okay.
He's seen on every podcast. This is Chester. Yeah.
Hello there, buddy. I listen. I wish I'd raised a hand when I had chair shots coming at me. And I will say that, it was a really bad idea to be dropping elbows off the concrete at small house shows, a lot of times in front of a couple hundred people. But if I didn't look at every match like it was the most important match, uh, I don't think I ever would have uh, reached, I wouldn't have gotten a full time job, let alone had the opportunity to kind of find myself in world class championship wrestling, start making a little money in WCW, leave for 15 months, come back as a much more serious character, and then have the confidence that I could excel in WWE, where I previously found out that, they kind of despised the way I looked and my style of wrestling. But I learned to believe in myself, and I look at your dad the same way. Nobody was saying, "Yeah, this is the wee lad from Wigan that he's going to be a big thing," but he stuck it out. He went through the hardships. He believed in himself. He put put light heavyweight wrestling really on the map, along with Tiger Mask and a handful of those other great wrestlers from New Japan, and redefined what tag team wrestling could be. He did everything short of, being in a main run for for the WWF title. And I don't think that was ever in the cards because, the people in charge, they liked those 6'4" plus, much larger people. But, no one will ever, no one would ever watch your dad in his prime or even in the years that followed would ever doubt that he was amazing. Now it's up to individuals to figure out who's among the best ever. I've been around a long time. I'll always put him on that list. And honestly, if someone came along who did it even better, I would probably not knock your dad off the list because of the impact.
Not there too long.
Yeah, it's like, after all these years, you can't say, "Oh, someone else is more influential," because I don't think anyone was more influential for the high flying wrestlers who combined strong style and technical wrestling.
I always say you are the nicest man in the business, and this is just another example. You coming on my show today, I really appreciate it. You are so humble and kind, and I'm just so happy that we got this opportunity today. So thank you so much.
Bronwyn, I want you to know, I've asked my agent, Canada, the dollar, you take quite a hit, like.
Oh my gosh, awful. It's so bad.
It's awful. I did a couple events in Ottawa and Montreal. We're like, wow, we're sold out. And what was the payoff? But I did tell my agent, I said, I really want to do Edmonton and Calgary, mostly Calgary. And you're a big reason why. I mean, I hope that I get another 22 Harts out there. I hope Uncle Brett shows up. But Natty came she came to one of my shows. I think two of my shows. Georgia was at the last show. Yeah. And it's, I had that great dinner with you and your mom. And can I embarrass you for a second?
Sure.
Your mom was talking and she goes, Bronwyn looks up to you as a father figure. And I go, she does? And I looked at you and you're just kind of like nodding your head. And so I don't think I've done a great job as a father figure, as I don't keep in touch with you as much as I should. But
well, the thing is, that was my first time meeting you face to face. And my mom says that. I'm like, Mom. I'm like, yes, I like in a way I do, because I'm like, my dad was a wrestler, you're a wrestler, you're a father. So I look up to you like, oh my God, you have children and you're a good dad. And so I admire that. And
it wasn't the first time we met, but it was the first time we really had a chance to talk.
Yeah.
But do you remember how excited I was or happy I was when you told me who you were? I was really happy. And I don't do a great job of keeping in touch, but we have kept in touch for many years. And I'm only a text we're on WhatsApp together, and I'm only a message away anytime you need some friendly advice.
When you'll be back in Calgary?
I'm going to work on I'm going to look on maybe late April. I'm going to see if I can do it. I don't want to, the tour's going to end right around the end of April, but I don't want to get there. I'm pretty busy in March, and let's face it, it's still really cold in Calgary in March. But it's kind of yucky where the snow's melting. It's not as pretty anymore.
Yeah, so April would be better.
Yeah, April would be better. So I didn't mean to call Calgary yucky. Sorry if I offended you, but Bronwyn, I have to run.
Wonderland out there right now. You would love it, Santa.
I know I would. I know. And I'm so happy that I had a chance over the past few years to write a couple letters and get a video to you from the big guy.
Yeah, it's for the kids. So yeah, I have that
thanks
forever, and I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Bronwyn, for having me on as your guest. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in with Dirt with the Doll with Mick Foley. And remember to subscribe to X Brand Wrestling, hashtag Dynamite Kid for Hall of Fame. I have that petition going. Please sign, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Bronwyn.